We pick up the episode as the Enterprise arrives at a starbase. Seems it's been summoned by Commodore Wesley for a special mission, one so secret that Kirk doesn't even know what it is yet. What's weirder, most of the crew is going to be left here on the station, which doesn't make much sense because they need the crew. I mean, if only to die to prove the situation is serious. And the situation is serious. There are war games planned for an entire assault force taking on just the Enterprise, which even Kirk has to admit is a little bit one-sided. Not that he's complaining, of course. Bring 'em on! But there should be a pretty good reason if you're going to do that.
Have you heard of the M5 Multitronic unit?
Yeah, it's a highway to the southwest of England, right? Actually, it's an experimental new computer, one designed to coordinate all the systems on a starship, and it's going to be installed in the Enterprise to see how well it can handle things, which should be pretty darn well because it's been designed by Dr. Daystrom himself, a genius responsible for the designs that all advanced computers are using. But of course there are still people who insist that MacBooks are better.
I don't like it, Jim.
Well, color me surprised. Spock, of course, is all in favor of it. Testing this computer to see if the ship can run more efficiently is a worthwhile goal. For Kirk, though, things are a bit more complicated. The story was conceived by Lawrence Wolfe and purchased for the show by John Meredith Lucas for the extremely important reason that it could be filmed cheaply. But there was a very serious problem with it. Wolfe was not a writer, but he was really, really interested in computers, and so decided to write a Star Trek story to talk about them. Except that it so dominated the story that there was almost nothing left for the actual Star Trek characters to do. And we could hardly do that because, of course, Gene was already planning to do that in Assignment Earth 2 episodes later. So Dorothy Fontana once again stepped up and did a rewrite to make the story more relevant to the Star Trek characters. Thus, Kirk's main concern in this story is that the computer might be bucking for his job, a reflection of its times as more and more people worried about automation leading to people losing their jobs. But they soon meet Dr. Daystrom and M5, the ultimate computer, although the first thing it needs is a serious case mod if it's going to live up to that title. Daystrom is very proud of his creation, naturally, but Kirk says if this thing succeeds, it'll take something valuable away from the human experience. But Daystrom counters that what would really bother Kirk is the loss of all of the perks and prestige that go with being a captain. From an objective standpoint, having a machine that could do the job better could only be a good thing. And out in the hall, Kirk struggles with this, having a sense that M5 is dangerous, but not sure if that's his instincts as a captain talking, or a fear of losing everything that goes with being a captain. He certainly is touchy when M5 is undergoing its first tests, taking slight umbrage at Dr. Daystrom's suggestion that he doesn't have to constantly engage and disengage M5 to keep maintaining control of the ship, since the whole purpose of this is to determine if it can control the ship. Even when Spock comes over to privately tell Kirk that Daystrom is correct on both points, Kirk turns it around, as if to imply that there's something more to Spock's support of M5, when Spock's only point is that it's a breakthrough for computers and a notable breakthrough for Dr. Daystrom himself. But Kirk is still resistant and mistrustful of M5. When he and M5 have different recommendations for the landing party on the planet that they're about to explore, he puts it down to differences in judgment, while Spock and Daystrom insist that it's not judgment, it's logic. At least that's what M5 is using. In other words, that it is right and Kirk is wrong. When asked for an explanation, the M5 points out that the scientist it had selected, despite being an ensign and new to the ship, actually had extensive experience that would be beneficial to this mission, and that Kirk and McCoy were excluded because they're non-essential personnel. This isn't a medical mission after all, so McCoy is only needed if there is an injury and could be beamed down then. And since Spock is the science officer and overseeing the mission, there's no need for Kirk to oversee it. Actually, there's no need for Kirk to oversee anything. The implication is that there's nothing that Kirk can do that the computer can't do better, although I'm sure there's a number of female yeomen on board that would disagree with that. But nevertheless, that does seem to be the case, because soon an unscheduled battle drill happens to test M5's response, and when it's all done, Spock's assessment for the record was that the computer's response was not only correct, but superseded anything that a normal crew could have done. But Spock makes clear that, despite his praise, that doesn't mean he believes that a computer should replace Kirk.
It was impressive. Might even be practical.
Practical, Captain. Perhaps. But not desirable. Computers make excellent and efficient servants, but I have no wish to serve under them. Captain, a starship also runs on loyalty to one man, and nothing to replace it or him.
But that warming of Kirk's heart quickly has a bucket of ice water dumped on it as Commodore Wesley calls up to congratulate the Enterprise, the M5, and Captain Dunsel. Dunsel being slang for a part that serves no useful purpose. Bones thinks about what that means and figures he knows exactly what Kirk needs right now. Booze! As we've established, his prescriptions make him the best damn doctor in Starfleet. Thanks to him, you can file an insurance claim on a lap dance. It's just a little something to get Kirk to open up, and he confesses that this situation has put him in a very unusual position, that for the first time, he doesn't feel as if the Enterprise is his ship. With M5 functioning as a brain of sorts, it's no longer under his command, but doing whatever seems logical to a machine. And that probably doesn't involve any green women at all, damn it. Their little talk is interrupted by an alert that there's another ship in the area, but it's just an automated ore transport. So Kirk turns off the M5 and orders them to give the ship a wide berth. Anyone who's ever had to drive behind a gravel truck understands that. But M5 apparently is highly resentful of another automated ship all getting up in its face, so instead it alters course to intercept and blows it up. The crew could do nothing to stop it. M5 has completely locked them out. Daystrom gets called in to explain this, but obviously there is no explanation when this happens. Well, besides the usual kill all humans that you expect from machines rising up. Naturally, with his disposition, Kirk seizes the opportunity to cancel all further tests of the M5 and orders it shut down and disconnected. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision for him to make. It can certainly be argued that once bombs get involved in a snafu, maybe you should stop and figure out what the hell is going on before you let it go and do something else. It's just that Kirk is obviously not going to be objective in his assessment. This is why, after they discover a force field preventing them from turning off M5, that Kirk sides with Scotty over Daystrom. Daystrom wants to try to troubleshoot the problem. Scotty just plans to cut the power to the thing and they'll have control again. This ends badly, though, because when the engineer goes to do that, M5 taps into the panel to serve as a new power source, disintegrating the poor guy who was in the way. At this point, there's no real argument against shutting it down, no matter what your feelings is. It's time to unplug it once somebody is dead. If one of Google's self-driving cars hops up on the sidewalk and runs somebody down, you're past the point of a guy with a toolbox saying, that's a bit of a puzzler, that is. But Spock has an interesting point to add.
Of course, the M5 itself has not behaved logically.
Please, Spock, do me a favor. And don't say it's fascinating.
No. But it is interesting.
This is why I drink so much. But despite what happened, Daystrom believes that shutting down M5 is a mistake.
Have you found a solution? A way to shut that thing off?
You don't shut a child off when it makes a mistake.
Well, that's because you can't. Believe me, I was a teacher. It would have been a nice option sometimes. While the first half of the show had been about Kirk facing the possibility of obsolescence, now we're having revealed a different form of obsolescence that Daystrom has been struggling with. He had made his greatest breakthrough when he was 24, and it was a revolutionary change. But since then, he hasn't made any more. He's been living in the shadow of a man half his age, and is desperate to show that he is still that same genius. So he has invested himself in the success of this program. The first 4 iterations all failed. M5 is the one that seems to be working, so he's all the more willing to overlook any failings in the hopes that they're merely eccentricities that will be overcome. He can't accept the possibility of failure. But failure seems to be on the menu today, as both Scotty and Spock work to get manual control back, only to discover that M5 figured out what they were doing and rerouted the controls while simultaneously making it appear that everything was functioning normally. In other words, it outsmarted them, which is a rather sickening prelude to what's about to happen since 4 ships are showing up for these scheduled war games, unaware that HAL 9000 has taken over the place. So instead of some Marquis of Queensberry rules, the Enterprise goes straight for the junk, raising shields and using full-power attacks against the other ships. The Commodore finally calls up to ask what the hell, There's over 60 dead between the two ships attacked in this first volley. You might be inclined to think that he's an idiot for not immediately concluding that M5 is to blame, but part of the underlying assumption of those advocating M5 is that it's devoid of human weaknesses, including pride. And given that the thing is supposed to have an on-off switch and the ability to just unplug it, his first thought isn't that the machine has run amok, it's that Kirk, with his human ego, was trying to make some kind of point with this, unaware of how much death it would cause. In response to that, and with the ship refusing hails, the Commodore asks permission of Starfleet to rally a full battle fleet and destroy the Enterprise, which may not even be enough, although I'm sure the Klingons and Romulans would be happy to pitch in if asked. Daystrom is going to have to try to reason with M5, since he has the best chance, not only as its creator, but also because its programming is based off of Daystrom's own memory engrams.
I don't mean anything by this, but is there any particular reason why he's black?
Sure. I wanted him to be perfect.
But as Daystrom pleads with M5, it turns into a rant about the past 20 years of others getting the glory using discoveries and creations based upon his work, while he has failed to do the same. As Bones notes, Daystrom is suffering a nervous breakdown. Not only is this another in a long string of professional failures, but that failure is costing hundreds of lives. And we can infer from the episode that such a thing is completely antithetic to all that Daystrom believes in. In a way, he tried to create life as a means to protect life, and that creation is snuffing life out. So in the face of that horrific contradiction, Daystrom falls apart completely, beginning siding with M5. The only way he can cope with what he has done is to embrace it. A killing spree isn't a bug, it's a feature. So Kirk does the fourth thing he's most famous for. After kicking ass, wooing women, and ripping his shirt, comes talking a computer to death. So Kirk argues that what he did wasn't in self-defense, but murder. And because it carries Daystrom's mental patterns, it not only has his sense of self-preservation, but also has his capacity for guilt, so it is convinced that it should die for that. So it shuts itself down to wait for the inevitable destruction of the Enterprise, which is good in the sense that it's going to stop killing people by the hundreds, but it's not very good news for the 19 people who are still on board the Enterprise. But nevertheless, it is amazing to discover that a computer can be capable of feeling remorse to the point of desiring execution, and in the wake of that revelation, there's only one thing that Kirk can say: unplug that fucking thing! Scotty is working on getting control back, but the communication is going to take a while. They can get the shields up, but Kirk insists on keeping those down, believing their only hope is his belief that Commodore Wesley would not fire upon a defenseless ship, which proves correct, thankfully, and it means that even in TOS, the Enterprise is saved by Wesley. Post-episode follow-up? Annoying character goes to Dr. Daystrom's outfit. I have never seen a shirt that has bell-bottoms on it. We have a Brahma of the Week award for M5. I'd say it demonstrated reaching the status of a life form based upon its actions, so that qualifies. Final score for the ultimate computer is 8 out of 10. While it certainly could be argued that it's an anti-technology episode, I think that ultimately, no pun intended, this is an episode about humanity. The flaws in Kirk, Daystrom, and Daystrom's invention that carries the virtues and flaws of its creator. While Kirk is, on the one hand, vindicated by the fact that M5 fails, there's also no denying that it surpassed the human crew in many aspects, even Kirk himself by recalling information that Kirk did not. And Spock provides a balanced perspective to things, pointing out that just because you acknowledge that a computer is more efficient does not mean that computers are automatically better than people are. It merely means that for certain tasks, a computer would be the more logical choice. But that humanity issue is the real strength of the episode, especially with Dorothy Fontana's way of crafting it. It has a real heart to it, the drama works well, the tragedy profound, and the humor of it is quite amusing. All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
would be most interesting to impress your memory engrams on a computer, Doctor. The resulting torrential flood of illogic would be most entertaining.